In those weeks in Barcelona, in November 1975, as General Franco lay dying, you could be forgiven for believing that things were ordinary. Spain was on the edge, but there was no sign of this. Instead, there was a rumor that a gay bar had opened, and even a rumor of its name. It was called, I was told, El Elefante Blanco, or the White Elephant, but no one knew where it was. In those weeks, news of where it might be or might have been seemed a pressing issue. As the old dictator lay dying, I was watching for signs. But the police on the street seemed casual at the beginning, watching out with no special attention or just chatting to each other. The streets themselves were empty or full in a normal way, depending on the time of day. It was all normal. A few nights a week I would go to a flat in Plaza Real and find that many other guys had come there too, but no one talked about politics. It would not have been cool to talk about politics then. People would have laughed at you or wondered what was wrong with you. Anyone young had shrugged politics off. Instead, the lights would be turned low in one of the rooms, maybe in two of the rooms, and maybe in all of the rooms, and guys would move into pairs and make out, and maybe there would be hashish and music, American music and jazz. And then when it was all over, some guy would do an imitation of a film star and everyone would laugh. As the dictator was gasping for life, it was a time of ease and jokes. Unless you were on your way to do military service, you had long hair and an attitude of insouciance, carelessness. You wanted to be amused, to be free to come and go, or maybe just come until you were hungry, and then drift away to find some food. If I had known how to examine things properly, I would have seen that private life then, as in any country on the edge, had taken on a rare intensity because there was no public life. Everyone had to create their own personal elefante blanco in the absence of the real thing, and they did this with what seemed to me like style and subtlety, but maybe that came from habit, and they did it carefully without making it obvious how careful they were being, and they did it indoors. They made it seem natural. It was only later it occurred to me that this was an essential part of the edginess of that time. It is just what happens when the public realm becomes intolerable. Indoor space becomes rich, the outdoors unmentionable. In the absence of freedom of speech, there is muffled laughter and there are languorous orgasms. In the year that followed, information was on the edge. No one understood why the most vocal and prominent oppositions of the old regime were not on the demonstrations. Later we learned that they knew that democracy was coming anyway and coming soon. But the rest of us didn't know because no one listened to the radio or read the newspapers, but no one who worked for the press knew either. They were all locked into the old regime, or they were in a state of pure confusion. The police then attacked some demonstrations with ferocity, but by the spring or the autumn of 1976, they did this only sometimes. Other times, they stood by as though they wanted to protect us or make sure we took the correct route, or they held the traffic back so we could get by. After one march, the town hall put on a concert to entertain us. A potential rebellion was being rendered haphazard and harmless. But there were still moments when that was not clear. In one of the main squares on Sunday evenings, the Catalans did their demure and traditional dance, the sardana, which had been banned but was now legal. One evening, the police attacked the dancers with batons. No one knew why. Some days, for no reason, you could see the police by the busload blocking streets or standing in rows on the places where people walked at night. They could, as though they were actors, seem nervous, aggressive, on the edge too. Maybe they knew that their days of attacking people would soon be over and they wanted to get a last chance to play the part. Still, most people thought that the king, who had inherited power from the dictator, was an idiot, a puppet, a leftover figure who would try to impose Franco's legacy on a new generation. The king could not explain, because there was nowhere for him to do so, that he really meant to make Spain into a normal democracy. When he came to Barcelona and made a speech in Catalan, the public use of which had been banned by Franco, People laughed at his bad pronunciation, but no one I met thought it was significant that he had tried to speak the language at all. People were afraid to think or hope that such gestures might be significant. In the autumn of 1976, I noticed that the programs for the classical concerts in the main concert hall, publicly funded, were printed in Catalan only. It looked like an act of defiance. Only later did it become clear that it was part of an official plan, an official message. In the following year, I realized one night that there would not be another civil war or even a long continuation of state repression and dictatorship in Spain. It was a Saturday night in April 1977, and I was in a taxi when the news came on that the Communist Party had been legalized. The driver went crazy, beeping the horn of the car in joy, and the communist leaders, including La Pasionaria from the Civil War, who had been waiting in a Paris airport, flew into Madrid that night to cheering crowds. Later I would learn that these communist leaders had made a deal, promising to run for election if they were legalized and let into the country. But when they were banned, their power was both shadowy and enormous. It was the only real way you could oppose the regime in the last decade of its reign. Once the party was legal and normalized, its power faded in the new Spain. Someone had put thought into that. In that year, as edges dissolved, as edges lost their sharpness, as the periphery moved towards the center and the center gave way, people who had shrugged about politics became political. They became Catalan nationalists or socialists or communists. People who were gay became gay activists. I remember one day standing back to watch a march of the city's barmen who were threatening strike for better conditions. They were marching according to their affiliation. Different barmen unions, and then socialist barmen, communist barmen, fringe group barmen. And suddenly, I saw one of the guys from that apartment in Plaza Real, from the nights when the dictator was dying. As a barman, now he was marching with the communists, and he was raising his fist to the sky or towards the town hall or in the direction of authority. He was fired up with political fervor, as I had seen him fired up with something more personal and more private just 2 years earlier. He looked like the future. By then, after those years on the edge, we were sure, all of us, that the future had come and was likely to last. Slowly, we had reason to believe that our own time on the edge, like our youth, had come to an end. Slowly, we had been educated to read the signs.